Treasurer Rogers.
Here.
Member Horton. Member Hamilton.
Here.
Member Hutter. Member Norvell.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Fantastic. John, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next order of business is approval of the minutes of the past meetings of the Airport Authority. Any members of the Airport Authority have any comments from those minutes that have been published? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the last Airport Authority meeting.
I move to approve the minutes of the last meeting of the Airport Authority as presented.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the Airport Authority meeting, previous Airport Authority meeting as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved. We're not going to be modifying the agenda this evening, so we can move on from that. Public comment. At this time, any member of the public who wishes to address the Airport Authority can speak on an agendized or non-agendized matter related to the airport. We do limit your comments to 3 minutes, and that would be per person or topic. If you need additional time, please request that I calendar the matter for an Airport Authority meeting in the future. Any members of the public care to opine? No? You came here just to enjoy the company, huh? Okay. Sorry to bore you. Okay, no public comment. Airport engineers report. Do we have the engineer on the line tonight?
Are you there, Nadine?
They should be on the line.
Are you there, Nadine?
I will say the WebEx setup was a little bit different than it has been in the past, but it was set up, and then
Okay. Why don't we move on from that for now?
I'll shoot him a text. And
Okay, let's move on, and then we can hear them towards the end of the meeting then. We don't have a consent agenda this evening, but we do have a couple items on our public hearing section of the agenda. The first is discussion and possible action for us to review and discuss, modify, revise, change, if any, the tentative fiscal year 23-24 final budget and adopt that resulting final budget. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Corey and John, who are really in charge of this discussion.
Okay, so the budget. This item is pretty straightforward. There was one change between the preliminary budget and this budget, and that is due to the bids coming in much higher than anticipated for the snow removal equipment building. So we did make an adjustment to that item to accurately reflect what we may expect from that. But that project, Nadine will comment on that if she can get dialed in. The bids came in way high, and Armstrong is currently working with the FAA to try to get it funded. There is a possibility that it will not get funded because of how high it is. But we're going to do what we can there. And so we adjusted the budget accordingly. That's the only change. John, do you have anything else?
This does not represent a change, but I just wanted to mention to the board that the largest Airport Authority funded capital item, which is a safety area aggregate project, that is in flux. We're going to leave it on the budget at the current level, but it is possible, if not likely, that some of that may end up with FAA funding, may not be authority funded. And I just wanted to, warn the board that Corey and I may use some of that money during the course of the next fiscal year for projects for pavement improvement projects other than just the safety area. So that's it. That's the only other item worth mentioning.
Any comments or questions from members of the Airport Authority on the budget? I trust everybody has had the chance before this evening to review this budget. But any comments or questions? Well, seeing none, I would say it's time for us to adopt it. Now, John, once adopted, we take this to the state, correct?
Yes, after we adopt this budget, we deliver it to the state. We are a state authorized entity. Then it's not an official budget until they approve it, which they almost certainly will.
Okay. Well, anybody want to make a motion to adopt the budget as presented?
I move to approve the FY 23-24 final budget.
Thank you, Curtis. Anyone care to second?
Second.
Thank you, Harlow. We have a motion and a second to approve the fiscal year 23-24 budget and adopt the same as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item on our agenda is for discussion and possible action. This is regarding our need to approve an RFQ for aviation planning services for a 5-year period commencing in 2024 through 2029. I'm going to let Corey take this on and explain to you why it's on the agenda and what we need to do about it.
Okay, so this agenda item is here because our current engineering and planning contracts are expiring in November of 2023. What this agenda item is for is approval of the request for qualifications for us to publish so that we can receive bids to make sure that we have engineering and planning services moving forward past November 2023. This comes up every 5 years. The last time this came up, I'm pretty happy with the results of the previous bid setup. So we're basically reusing the exact same RFQ, modified for the updated time period. There's one change that's notable in the engineering RFQ, and that is that the engineering consultant will approve any permit requests by airport tenants. That we have a lot of development coming up at the airport, and there are existing tenants that are going to want to be making improvements on their parcels. In Title 19, it clearly states that permit improvement applications must be approved by the airport engineer. And from my experience, that hasn't actually happened. So I wanted to make sure to include that in the RFQ so that moving forward, the winning engineering consultant will give their stamp of approval on these permit improvement applications. Other than that, they're very straightforward and exactly what they were 5 years ago. I think it's important to note these are two different RFQs. Planning and engineering is separate here, but I would encourage anyone who applies to apply for both, to put in a bid for both, and they could be potentially selected for both, or an arrangement could be made where we just make sure that these operations flow smoothly. Having your planner separate from your engineer makes it to where there are lots of portions of this projects that need to be collaborated on. We just need to make sure that the winning bidders are able to collaborate well with one another. And that's all that I have for that item.
So what we're approving this evening would be putting out this RFQ to receive qualifications, if you will, from qualified presenters that would be interested in providing these services to the airport. Just a summation here, once every 5 years, we do this. I trust everybody's had a chance to review the RFQ. Any questions on the process? Okay, seeing none. Yes, John.
Just looking ahead a little bit, Corey, okay, I'm assuming we'll put out the request for qualifications. There will be some people who will present their qualifications. And then what's the selection process going to look like?
I think we should do what was done 5 years ago. And there were selected members of the board and the airport manager who gave a weighted score based on certain criteria. And I would recommend using the same forms that were used previously. I think that went really smoothly. And that's how I think we should do it this time too.
Any other questions from members of the airport authority? Yes, Steve.
I just wanted to, Steve Takis, Airport Council, I just wanted to add two things. When we're going for professional services, it's not like a request for bids like we would do if we were just buying some equipment for the airport. It's a request for qualifications, which is how it's structured. And so then, as Corey explained, we go through and do a grading process, pick who we believe is the highest or the most desirable person entity to contract with, and then we go to them and negotiate the fees. And so that's the overall process that occurs, and that is what we did 5 years ago. And also, just to clarify, when Corey and I discussed this earlier about adding the language for review and approval of permittee plans, he referred to it several times as approval. Well, we're not contracting with them to approve everything. We're contracting with them to review it and approve it if it's right to approve it. If there's something wrong with it, to tell us what's wrong with it so that we can get it fixed, so we can get to the point where those things are approved before they're built, which puts us back in compliance with the rules. It's exactly what Corey said. I just thought I'd fill in the blanks because there's a little bit more to the process. And I'm available for any questions as well.
Anyone else have any questions, comments? If not, I would recommend that we approve the, oh, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I see that we kind of lacked in our last 5 years is our building that we were going to build. We sent it out for bid, and we didn't get any bids, and now we've waited a year. The prices have gone up, and now everything's double. So I'm just wondering if in the future we could do somehow we could all do a better job at maybe getting a little bit better performance on all the projects we're trying to do, and I'm not sure that should happen now or a little bit later.
That's why we review these things. Now's not the appropriate time to address that, address performance, in my opinion. Humbly, I'll state that. But that's why we do put out these matters for RFQ, just like we did with our legal counsel. It gives everybody the opportunity to assess the relationship, look at the performance, and see what else is out there in the marketplace that would suit us best, be a very good match for the airport. Harlow?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the RFQ for planning services and the RFQ for architectural and engineering services from 2024 to 2029.
Mr. Chairman, before you take a vote, I think you should call for public comment.
We can do that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We missed that?
Is there any public comment on the matter? Sure. You want to be our airport engineer? Yeah, I thought you were opting in. I see that. Yeah, you're probably, thank you for pointing that out. Appreciate that. And that's fantastic. Let's revise that. Harlow, when you make your motion, could you ask that it be revised to Tuesday, July 6th? If you go to page 3 of the document. Well, it says here Monday, July 5th. Okay, so so we have the wrong date in here.
I would propose Friday, July 7th.
There you go. So we want to revise this document when we approve it? Okay, so Harlow, if you, here, let me show you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the RFQ for planning services and the RFQ for architectural engineering services from 2024 to 2029. And require that 5 copies of the statement of interest and qualifications should be submitted to the Airport Authority, to the Carson City Airport Authority, no later than 3 p.m. on Friday, July 7th, 2023.
I second that.
Thank you, Tim. So we have a motion and a second to approve this request for statement of interest and qualifications for architectural and engineering services. And thank you to our member of the public this evening for pointing out the error in the document. This will be revised so that copies of the statement of interest and qualifications should be submitted to the Airport Authority no later than 3 p.m. on Friday, July 7th of this year. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. So we have an RFQ to put out. Corey?
There's 2 of them. That was for the engineering. You also need to do the planning. It's right behind it.
Ah, okay. Same concept then. I'll tell you what, I will make this one so we don't confuse the matter. I would move that we approve the request for statement of interest and qualifications for airport planning services as proposed in our board packet today, with copies of the statement of interest and qualifications to be submitted to the Airport Authority no later than 3 p.m. Monday, July 7th of this year. Friday, July 7th. I'm reading from here. Friday, July 7th of 2023. And again, that's a revision to the document that's in everybody's board packet. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the request for statements of interest and qualifications for airport planning services of the Carson City Airport. And again, those statements of interest and qualifications will need to be submitted to the Airport Authority no later than 3 p.m. on Friday, July 7th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Airport Manager's Report. Corey?
First of all, Nadine is on the line now. So if you'd like to do the engineer's report,
Sure,
they can do that now.
sure.
Hi, Nadine, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Hi, I appreciate your patience with my technical difficulties here. So going through the update for each project here, no change on the snow removal equipment. That tentative delivery is still set for September. The aeronautical survey for nighttime approach project, as listed here, the design is complete and we're preparing and pinning up all of the bid documents to bid when we can. It's not going to, it might fit here by the end of this month, but I will give I'll give Corey the dates when we have those pinned down. So that's coming soon. And of course, once we have everything bid, we will have a better idea of construction costs and all of that, and the grants and all of that that go along with it. Excuse me. The snow removal equipment building, Corey mentioned earlier that we did receive pretty high bids, and the FAA, I'm in talks with the FAA every couple of days. They're giving me updates on what they can do as far as finding funding to fund the base bid of the project, which is the bulk of the project essentially. There may be some funding split between AIP, BIL bill, and state apportionment funding. So they're kind of working in the background to come up with the right combination of that and how to get it funded appropriately. It does take just a little bit because there are projects like the installation of the PAPIs. There are projects such as that around the state that are that have not bid yet. So they're kind of juggling all of these different projects and just making sure everything gets allocated where the highest priorities are. From what I can tell, Carson City and the SRE building is a pretty high priority for them. So we're pushing for that pretty hard. The only other thing with that project is Corey and I are coordinating with the city on that special use permit. So I believe are in review or maybe just completed the review. So I'll follow up and see if there's anything we need to do for that. And I believe that's all I have. I can take any questions if there are any.
Go ahead, John.
I'm not sure if Corey or Nadine is the correct person to answer this, but I'd like an answer. And I think I remember from previous discussions that we were considering on the offset PAPI and MALSIF project of separating those two construction items and evaluating them individually with the possibility that we wouldn't be doing both of them. Is that still in play, or what is the status of that?
Yeah, I can try and answer that if you don't mind, Corey. Essentially, what the construction phase has, what was finalized as far as the design leading up to the construction, is to go forward or move forward with bidding and constructing only the PAPI system, the offset PAPI system. And once the flight check and everything is completed after that construction, then we can go back, we as in Armstrong and Lean technology, can go back and reevaluate if the MALSIF is still needed to obtain that approach. So yes, it is split kind of in that way where we're definitely going to construct the PAPI, and then if the MALSIF is needed, we'll revisit that after everything is kind of settled after the flight check.
Nadine, this is Tim. I'm not sure if I'm following. I was told by Lean Engineering that they're totally separate and that the offset PAPI does not require the MALSAF. That is just an additional item that we were pursuing. Am I wrong?
No, they are separate projects. Well, it's kind of, they're kind of melded in together because of the MALSIF is kind of dependent on the offset PAPI, from what I understand.
I could add a little bit to that.
Okay, Corey.
So our objective is to get nighttime approval, and to get the lowest minimums possible out of our airport. We're not going to know the results of this until after the FAA does their flight study. So this planning includes both the PAPI and the MALSIF to complete that same objective. The two construction projects are independent construction projects, but they're both a part of the same grant because they're a part of trying to achieve the same goal. That is why we don't know if the MALSIF is going to be required or not at this point. And Lean, they have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen there, but they definitely don't speak for the FAA flight inspection team that's going to be out there.
All right.
Um,
Thanks, Nadine.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions for Nadine? Comments? Okay, thanks, Nadine. Okay, so Corey, your report, please.
Okay, so fuel flowage was higher than it has been yet this year, but it's still low. I think that can still be contributed to weather. So lower than it was the previous year. Open House Planning Committee has been really busy, and we are definitely going to have an open house. There is going to be a live band, food, vendors, and it should be a great event. We've already got some ideas for next year that will probably improve upon what we've got planned for this year. We do have a layout map developed, so we have a pretty good idea of what this event is going to look like. We have the areas designated for all of the different static displays, the youth events, the food vendors, the stage for the band. We have a first aid booth, which Civil Air Patrol is going to provide, which will be available. They're actually going to have a camper with a generator and air conditioning available. So if there are any issues with like heat stroke or anything like that, we can accommodate that during the event. They will have basic first aid supplies available. It's not EMS or medical response. For anything like that, it'll be a call to 911. But we are prepared for first aid. Also, the Carson City Public Works was kind enough to provide cones for dividing off the various different areas and help with crowd control. This is a pretty big deal, as this initially was looking like it was going to be around $3,000 of an expense for us. Public Works really came through for us with this. So that's very helpful, and I really appreciate them helping us out with that. I've been busy working on updated policies and procedures for the FAA following our previous single audit from back in 2021. They asked for updated policies and procedures that demonstrated the detailed corrective action plan. And I'm working on that, and I'm near completion with that, which is great because that has been a lot of work. I requested that the architect who developed the renderings for the terminal building create an option 2 for the building design that includes a restaurant space and additional space available to lease. We've had enough interest in those items that I believe that it justifies pursuing funding for those items. We've already got parties that are willing to submit commitment letters that they would lease the additional space. So that should be an easy justification to the FAA. Both these services are considered aviation use, so they are eligible for funding. It's just a question of whether or not the funding will be available and if we will be selected. But then we'll be able to present 2 options. A primary option, but then a second option that also includes these additional items. Both of those items would generate additional revenues for the airport, and we'll have committed parties beforehand, so we can definitely justify. I personally completed a first aid, CPR, and AED class and recertification. My first aid stuff had been expired, so I went ahead and got that renewed. I've also attended the NBA conference. I've had a few additional meetings with interested parties about hangar development. Hangar development interest is definitely on the rise, and there are some groups they're very interested, and they're going to try to get some space from us. It's a really exciting time for hangar development and for the airport. Aircraft operations. So, I forgot to change that month in there too. Last month, the numbers were 2,543 according to ADSB data, and detailed charts of those operations are below. I did reach out to the company providing these numbers for us to ask about Paul's question of comparing these numbers to previous year's numbers. And I also brought up to them, if you notice in the imagery, there are now numbers that are in white on the total arrivals and departures portion. We were adding those manually before, and now they're including that on the report that we're able to pull, which is very convenient. They're also working on a solution to compare against previous years. They definitely can do it. It's just finding a way to present it in this format. So I'll be working on that. That's all that I've got in the manager's report.
Or I have a question.
Okay.
You mentioned that on your recap that last month that you refer, when you actually talk about total aircraft operations, you refer to February. We're now in May.
That
What
is the
about-
comment that I made where I did not change that month.
What's that mean then? So what
Typo.
about- It's a typo, so that would be for April.
Yes.
Okay. March and April. Okay, very good.
Any other questions or comments for Corey? Okay, seeing none. Steve, do you have anything you'd like to report to us?
Just briefly, the legislature is starting to close most of its bills. In fact, this Friday is the deadline for bills to get out of the second house. So bills already had a deadline to get out of one side, either the Senate or the Assembly. By Friday, they have to get out the other side. There are some exceptions on budget bills. But in terms of aviation bills, it's been very quiet. There's been two efforts, one by the Nevada Airports Association to seek funding for the Aviation Trust Fund. Those are funds that NDOT then distributes to the various airports, including us, to be able to use as matching grants. And it's unclear whether we're going to make the cut in the final budget or not, but we've requested money. The other aviation bill that's out there is really has to do with drones and law enforcement use of drones. It really doesn't impact our airport. So the aviation front's been quiet at the legislature, which is usually good news. That's all I have to report.
Thank you, Steve. John, did you want to add anything beyond what we discussed earlier?
Nothing particular to report. All the numbers are lining up well, barring any extraordinary events. We should end this fiscal year similar to the last two fiscal years, with a slightly over budget on revenues and slightly under budget on expenses.
That's always a good thing.
Always a good thing.
Any other comments for John? Questions? Okay, fair enough. Any members of the Airport Authority care to opine on any matter that wasn't agendized this evening? Okay, fair enough. We open it up again to public comment if anyone has anything they'd like to add. If not, one significant agenda item I want to bring to the attention of all for our next meeting. We'll have officer elections in our next meeting. Next month, June, will be my last meeting as chair of the Airport Authority. I have served 2 terms in a row as chair, two-year terms as chair, and it has been really an honor to do so. I mean, I can't begin to tell you what a great group of people we have on the Airport Authority and how pleased I am with how we run this airport as an authority. I want to thank my fellow Airport Authority members and staff for all that you have done to ensure that everything runs smoothly here. And I can't begin to thank all of you enough. It's not a one-person deal, but I need to move on to other parts of my life. And so somebody else is going to take this gavel. Tim agreed to do so, and we'll have an election in our next meeting, officer elections, and we'll let the Airport Authority decide who gets to do what moving forward starting in July. Okay. On that note, we will adjourn. See you next month.